Hi, and welcome to the panel on young workers and the future of Medicare for All. My name is Michael Lighty, longtime activist for Medicare for All, obviously not a young worker, but I'm joined by a panel of organizers who are. I'm president of Healthy California Now, and it's my pleasure to be a part of this and to first introduce Jenni Chang as our moderator. Jenni?
Thank you, Michael. I'm so grateful for all your work. You're an incredible activist. It's an honor to be here with you all. We have some really great panelists today. And I'm just personally just so excited about today's panel because of the conversations that have been going on with labor and, are so needed. And the younger generation of workers have this, really beautiful awareness of the issues and what's going on in our politics. So I will, without further ado, let them introduce themselves, maybe starting with Ankur Patel.
Yeah, so I'm Ankur Patel, born in Northridge Hospital, been plugged into different movements, especially public education. I'm a teacher now for Los Angeles Unified School District. This is a National Union of Healthcare Workers shirt. I was in the middle of that healthcare battle with SEIU because there's so many different layers to the struggle, and we all input in different ways. From my perspective, I've done a lot of stuff, traveled in Korea, worked in China, but I'm back here in the Valley in LAUSD because I think the public education workforce and the way that teachers are crucial to how we inform and educate about healthcare is just got me so excited to be on here with you. I don't want to take too much time, so let me just hand it off to the next person or back to Jenni.
All right. Thank you, Ankur. Wonderful. Noah Goodman.
Hey everyone, I'm Noah. I'm a New York City DSA member where I sit on the Healthcare Working Group leadership as well as DSA's Medicare for All steering committee on the national level. I'm involved in the New York Health Act fight locally as well as the Medicare for All fight on a national level. And I focus on here helping bridge the left labor divide and helping union members advocate for the New York Health Act within their unions. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great, thank you. So glad to have you. Hugo Soto-Martinez, please introduce.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jenni. Thank you, Michael. I am with UNITE-HERE Local 11. It's the hotel workers union here in the city of Los Angeles. I come from the rank and file. I helped organize my workplace many years ago when I was much younger. I was 23 years old and been fighting for workers to make sure they have good wages, health insurance, a pension, respect, and also injecting them into the larger, broader movement that's outside of the labor movement. I'm very happy to be here to talk about my experiences with Medicare for All.
Great, so glad to have you. And Wendy Ruiz, I think we may be having sound issues. Wendy, can you hear? All right, I'm going to send a message to Wendy, but let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about her. She's a member of IBEW Local 18. And I have the privilege of knowing her as an executive council member of Los Angeles Young Workers. Let me just, Wendy, if you want to jump off and back on, would love to have your voice. But let's jump right into it. Why do you support Medicare for All? It's an open question for all of you all. What brings you to this issue? Noah, would you like to start?
Yeah, I'll say I think there's the obvious moral and ethical imperative to bring healthcare to as many people as possible. Healthcare right now in the United States is nothing short of a disaster. Every single death because of lack of healthcare, or every single person in debt because of lack of adequate health insurance is nothing but a moral and ethical failure on the part of the United States. But I also think that healthcare is a great organizing tool. I think it's the best issue to build class consciousness. It is a universal program that affects every single person, regardless of class, of race, of gender. Everyone is affected by healthcare, and because of that, it's our best tool to build a broader left-wing movement in this country.
Great. Anyone else have thoughts?
Well, I would jump in. So I grew up in Los Angeles my whole life. My parents were street vendors, and we didn't have health insurance. I remember growing up and seeing my mom, go to a clinic, be there for 8 hours just to be seen for a cough or a cold, something so simple. A lot of my relatives were undocumented in this country and didn't have access to those kind of jobs and healthcare. And so I saw sort of the system, right? How it didn't help people. Eventually, my dad was disabled for life because we didn't have health insurance. And so when we won the union in my workplace, right, I understood the importance of having health insurance and protections and how dramatically it changed people's life. And so obviously that's a good thing. We do that for our union members, but it's simply not enough. There's lots of workers who don't have access to have a union, don't have access to healthcare, they're excluded from the system for whatever reason. And so sort of my personal experiences growing up and the transformation that it had for me and my coworkers when we won that union is something that we need to expand. They shouldn't be left to workers to fight and to scrape and to beat a corporation. That's something that is a human right and something that we fight for at a union to make sure every worker has it.
It's great. So, just building on what Noah's saying, class consciousness, and, you talk about the unions and the transformation that's needed. Ankur, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, taking Noah's big picture societal framework and Hugo's specific story, how it impacts people at the individual level. I just like to say it's cheaper and better than what we have now. That's why I'm for it.
All right. Wendy, how's your sound? All right, we miss you. Hope you can join us. Michael, do you want to share what brings you to the healthcare movement?
Well, it is a combination of personal and political perspectives, because I was really formed in terms of a kind of awareness of the healthcare system at the beginning of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. As a gay man coming out, you saw fundamentally that combination of structural homophobia and in relation in particular to the healthcare system, where these were guys my age, a little bit older, some younger, were expendable. And nothing was really done to save lives for over a dozen years, honestly. And that really imprinted upon me kind of the fundamental character of the American healthcare system, which this is really in the early 80s, was just starting as an industry and has gotten so much worse since then. Of course, the COVID experience is relevant to that. And then I was director of Democratic Socialists of America in the early 90s, when we really promoted Medicare for All as an alternative to the Clinton plan. And I can only imagine how healthier, how much better we would have been prepared for COVID, and just in general, how much more solidarity there would be in society if we had won Medicare for All then.
I'm with you. That really resonates. For me, it's also very personal. I always tell the story about my mother being the breadwinner of our home. There's 5 people with my dad, who was disabled at 40 because of a stroke and couldn't work. And that's really young. I'm like 42 now. I can't imagine not bringing income to the house. But then, and she's someone who had a 3rd grade education, an immigrant, both of them immigrants from South Korea, limited education, limited resources, making very little money, taking care of 3 kids, one of them autistic, like severely autistic. My brother is someone who does not know how to wipe his bottom. He needs a lot of help. He's an incapacitated person. And so, when you're little, you just kind of, that's life. Life is what you get. And then the reality as an adult, like what they went through and not being able to afford healthcare when I got sick, and when my dad had his stroke, all of that, just my brother being on meds, like there's just so many healthcare needs, and I love modern medicine, but I'm resentful. I'm resentful what our current healthcare system does to women, what it does to immigrants who are just working their butts off to survive. And so yes, it's very personal. And I hear your stories and why we need healthcare. I think we all agree that we all need to keep pushing our unions to do more and better. But so what is your view? What is everyone's view on the state of the effort to win Medicare for all, whether it's state by state or at the national level. You know, in California, we have our bills, 18 years worth of bills or efforts, initiatives. And each one develops a movement. And, you know, certainly the Bernie Sanders movement, his candidacy really propelled the issue and the conversation at a national level. Noah, do you have thoughts on this one? I like to go from East Coast to West Coast.
Yeah, I think that the Bernie Sanders campaign gave us an opportunity in that it created a constituency for Medicare for All that never really existed before. And it's up to us as organizers to organize that constituency to create the situation where we can pass Medicare for All. I think something as transformative as Medicare for All, or the New York Health Act here locally, we take the view that it's not going to pass unless we have an organized working class that's willing and ready to fight for it and flex the power that they have to force the politicians to give us Medicare for All. And I think Bernie gave us an opportunity that we've never had before to build that constituency if we organize it right.
Yeah, if I can jump in here, in terms of taking that Bernie energy and where did we go with it in California, a lot of it got funneled into the California Democratic Party, where resolutions, and like you're saying, Jenny, 18 years of bills before Bernie, and especially since Bernie, there's been so much effort put into it. And we're finding, and then you go back into the history, they're just finding different ways of tabling it, of not even bringing it to a vote, of blaming a Republican governor for vetoing it. Every time it's a little bit different. But it's political theater. So like, I think we need to really up our game, and the power has to come from the workers, and what we're doing here is part of that. And these the politicians who are taking money from the health insurance companies, we can't count on them, but still they're still sponsoring the bills. So there's this they know what they're doing, and we are playing checkers on a chessboard sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel incredibly optimistic about the state of it is right now, and I know we didn't win it in California, but I think I take my lessons from organizing, right? It's what you win is reflection of the power that you build, right? And so this was not even on the table just a few years ago. And so, and I sort of see this, and of course they're gonna fight the deep blue states, they're gonna fight us tooth and nail, because they know that when we win it, it's going to be a domino effect, right? Like, we can look at many different policies across the country. Gay marriage was one of them, right? People were fighting and fighting and fighting. We won it at one state. It gave inspiration for other folks to fight as well. And so I think that we just have to, as Californians, right, and other states, and whoever's listening to us in your state, I think the thing is, how do you move the dialogue and the discussion just a little bit closer, right? A little bit closer. And so I feel like, and at some point we're going to reach a tipping point, and all of a sudden you're going to see things move. And so I think in California, I'm really happy the discussions are there. We're forcing it. We're making moderate Democrats, right? Think about what it means to be a Democrat, what it means to be with working people. And so we're just going to keep pushing the message, keep organizing.
So well said. Like in California, I definitely see that happening. There was, we've had many bills, which all have been really helpful to pushing, just getting on the governor's desk every time should be a goal, like get him to sign it, or her to sign it. And then, the governor, because we had a governor who actually ran on single payer, we're able to hold his feet to the fire and say, you promised us. And he has this commission that actually started initially talking about multi-payer systems. We're like, we don't want a multi-payer system. That's not what you promised. And just, with public pressure and organizing, getting the institutional support, that commission went from multi-payer and just completely 180. It was like talking about the focus groups were all focused on like provider groups and not the patients, but it turned around, and the conversation went from kind of corporate interests to how do we transition to single payer? Like, how do we do this? Let's talk about how to do this. And that's been huge. And just everywhere we can push the needle, like we need to show up and keep pushing. Because at the end of the day, it's like, the people who have the power are going to make the decisions and make things happen. So I think, as much as we can show popular support with a bill, or whether it's a ballot initiative, whatever it is. It's like, I think we just try to show solidarity in the larger movement, and make sure our frustrations are not taken out on each other, because that definitely happens. But I'm with you, like, our wins will reflect our will and our power. I wish Wendy were on. She's going to join us shortly. She's going to join us by laptop, she says. So any other thoughts here?
I was going to add, I think Medicare for All presents such a great organizing opportunity, because not only is it universal, but it's incredibly popular. And it is one of the easiest things, I think, to talk to people about, because nobody likes their healthcare. And everybody is angry about it, and everyone wants something better. And Medicare for All, I think, presents so many great opportunities for not only the legislative work that's been discussed here, but more so non-legislative work to build a broader movement, to use as an opportunity for radical, political education, to train people up as organizers, to build a broader left movement, so it ventures out from the typical activist sphere, and on top of that, to build a broader labor left coalition, as we see around the country that union healthcare is under attack in more and more places. For example, in New York City, there's a big push to put union members on Medicare Advantage. And we have this incredible opportunity to bring more people into the fight for Medicare for All through the universality of it and the popular support it has.
I think you're right. Just that it's such a popular issue for civic engagement. I wonder if it's. I mean, we could talk about it, like how popular it is within unions. But Wendy, looks like you're on camera. If I could just backtrack a little bit so we can have your personal. Well, first, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us, why you support Medicare for All.
Can you guys hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We hear you. Okay.
Made it.
This is
I have
fun.
never struggled so much in my life. Jeez, worse than
I've
a
heard your
workout, you guys.
stories.
This is tough. Good evening, everyone. My name is Wendy Ruiz. I am so grateful that you guys waited for me today, because this was, as they say in my country of South Central, not the business. Let's see, where do I start? So I am a person who is born and raised in Los Angeles. I am highly involved in a lot of different organizations. I have the privilege of working for the city of Los Angeles. I work for power engineering at the Department of Water and Power, and I belong to IBEW Local 18. I am very privileged, not just to work for the city that raised me, but to be a part of the fabric that makes this city, and to be a part of a union. My family doesn't come from a union family. I am the first, and to me, it's a huge privilege. I have this saying that I came up with when I joined the union, and that was that union jobs save lives. And the reason I say that is because before I had this job, I struggled so bad for bare necessities. Not because I'm not capable or resourceful or a hard worker. I actually worked in the special education field for a very long time before I went to the city. I had an internship in Washington, D.C. in the Ways and Means Subcommittee. I've been very privileged to do a lot of awesome things. And yet, I constantly lived paycheck to paycheck. And there was a point in time when I worked at a legal services nonprofit doing special education law. And for me, it was very important. I come from a background where I was a foster child for some time. And so at this nonprofit organization, we were attorneys that helped kids that were in the juvenile justice system and in the foster care system. A lot of times, a lot of these systems, together. And then on top of it, these kids had special education needs. And so this work became really important to me, because I remember thinking I was one of those kids, right? And I'm one of those parents, and I live in that community that benefits the most from these programs. And so that work was really important to me, but I was unable to continue in it because I am a mother of 3. And at some point, my medical insurance situation said you have $300 towards insurance. And so I could cover myself, and that was it. And even then, it wasn't enough to cover me. Like, I don't know how different the healthcare system is in other states, but I always feel like Los Angeles, California is privileged in almost always. So if we're struggling here, people are struggling even worse in other places. And so that was kind of what made me pivot into a different line of work. And I'm grateful for the opportunity that I've had to work for the city, which was not a goal of mine. And I really thank God for the opportunity to serve in the capacity. But the reason why I said that union jobs save lives is because I feel like it saved mine. You know, I always joke about, you know, people, when they ask me like, oh, you work. So at some point I worked for fire and police pensions for the city of LA. I made a lot less money. No joke. People will laugh at like the amount that I say. People, it sounds so awesome. You work for the city, you work for fire and police pensions. That sounds amazing. It sounds really nice. But I was still making like almost minimum wage, right? And I remember at some point when people started asking me, oh, where are you now? And I say, oh, you know, I actually promoted to the Department of Water and Power. And they're like, oh, that's really great. And I'm like, yeah, it is. It's so nice. I get to afford rent and food at the same time. And people laughed, and I laughed too. It's funny, but it's funny because it's true. Many of us are not able to pay rent and pay food at the same time, much less pay for some sort of medical insurance or medical coverage on top of that. That is such a luxury. And
You know,
so
that reminds me of one of the points that were brought up, and it was various. You know, Hugo's very hopeful, and then there's also some apathy that was expressed from voters and workers, because was it Ankur? Who were you talking about? People were well, go ahead if you want to. Just why maybe young people are not as engaged on this issue on healthcare. But what is kind of your view on the state to win Medicare for all? And we can open this conversation back up to everyone. Like, do you see young people engaged, young workers engaged, or?
So to go off of Wendy's point, and maybe hand it back, but coming into a job like a teacher where you're getting healthcare as a young worker, you have a kind of apathy towards it because you're not using it. And maybe I'll throw it to Hugo, who was talking about a different kind of apathy that he deals with. So there's different kinds of apathy that young workers are facing. So from that perspective of taking it for granted, I think Hugo has a different perspective than a teacher's, but because so many more workers are having that experience where they don't have healthcare in the first place.
Yeah, you know, so I've been very fortunate to within my union to represent different industries, right? The hotel workers union tend to be a little older, you know, sort of in their 40s and 50s, but at the airport, it's a lot of young folks, right? I mean, for many of them, sometimes it's their first job. You know, sometimes they come out of high school and now they're working in the service job industry. They have health insurance, right? They get there, they have health insurance, and then we have to renegotiate the contract, and we say no, we have to fight, right? We have to get this much money from the employer to get health insurance, and they're like, well, I don't want health insurance. Like, I want more money, right? I want more, you know, because I think when you're younger, you know, I'm in my 30s, right? But when I was 20, I almost never got sick, right? Now I get sick a little more, right? When I was in my 20s, I was out and dancing, clubbing, and going having fun with my friends. That's money, right? You need money. You don't need health insurance, right? And so you feel very strong, very, you know, got a lot of vitality. And so sometimes for our members, whether they're younger, you know, you have to have a lot more education, a lot more discussion, a lot more agitation about like why these things are important, the standards, the things that, you know, and sometimes it's like, hey, look, these things don't exist, right? Having health insurance in your job is not actually a thing. That's not the norm. And so there's things to build off of that. But certainly with the younger folks, it just takes a little bit more patience, a little more education. And I think once they see the big picture, I think they jump on board. But it is definitely a challenge. I think it requires a lot more patience.
So how do we appeal to young workers? You know, what's the biggest obstacle to getting support for Medicare for all? Yeah, please.
I think we are fighting a lot of different battles, a lot of different fronts. Part of it really is the education piece. Like Hugo said, I mean, some of us really don't understand, right? I think some of us will come from varying backgrounds, varying, degrees of understanding some of these systems. I know when I'm reading policy, I thankfully I have the background in doing some of the legal work where I understand how to read some of this stuff and then what does it mean, right? Um, but as a consumer, as a client, as a patient, I also know what that means. And that's something that's really hard for you to teach someone that doesn't understand until they're there, right? Like all the different obstacles of how difficult it is, and what this is going to look like for the end user. Part of it for me, especially in the union system, in the union world, is the indoctrination of the adults, because they're the ones teaching the ropes to all the younger workers. And if they come from a certain mentality and a certain background, a lot of times from a different age group, a lot of times from a different social status, a lot of times from a different socioeconomic class, these things to them is not, it's not like important because they've always had it, and so they don't understand the privilege in having that, and they don't understand the need of not having it, right? Like I can't explain to someone who has always had health insurance what it means to someone that has never had it. Like, have you ever been so sick that you were just like, oh my god, I might die, but maybe I can hold on for another day or two and it won't cost my family complete bankruptcy? These are the decisions that some of our families are making. We're saying, I can't afford to go to the doctor because if I go to the doctor, I am going to put my whole children's life at risk. Living indoors will not be an option for us, because that's how real it is. A lot of us have been so used to living a paycheck away from homelessness, a paycheck away.
Even within
How
as
many
union
times I had
members.
$20 and said, these are my last $20 until my next check comes in. That's a real consideration. And I actually have known people that have not gone to the doctor, do not get medication, really hold out. And a lot of times you think this could have been prevented. Somebody could have been here 5 or 10 or 15 years longer, but they're not. But they're not because they couldn't go to the doctor.
I mean, these are conversations we need to have. Wendy, I assume you're talking about union members?
Yes.
So
I mean that, I work with a lot of construction people, a lot of older men, many of them older white men, right? Highly technical skills, make in great amount of money, very stable, doing very well for themselves and for their family. And they don't have that understanding of like, what is it like to not have insurance? So when the new linemen come in or the new construction guys come in, right? It's this mentality of like, well, we have it. We have insurance. We've always had insurance. Yeah, but not everybody knows what that feels like. Not everybody understands that privilege in you always having insurance. Some of us never had it. Some of us, this is the first time ever that we get to go to the doctor and not feel guilty about seeing a doctor and getting a prescription. Like some of us, like literally, I go somewhere and I'm like, how much is it? Because my kids have to eat. And so if I need to forego something in order to make sure that they have something, I will forego everything to make sure that they have access to whatever it is that they need. That's my job as a parent. And so some people don't understand that. Some people from certain backgrounds don't understand what it's like to make that decision. And so when you're a new union member, right, and you come from a different background, it's not always so easy to say, well, I haven't always come from that amount of privilege. I've never had that much privilege where I never considered it, where it didn't matter to me, where if somebody, and this is the funny thing about unions, because I was a part of AFSCME Local 3090 when I was at the city before I went to DWP. And as much as people want to say that they don't care about insurance, they don't care about it perhaps in theory. But the moment they say we're going to cut your benefits, they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What do you mean? They're not used to that, right? And so the moment you say, well, maybe you're going to have to pay 10%. Do you know what 10% means to me? I have 3 kids. Maybe to a single person, it doesn't mean a lot to pay 10%. But for a person of a family of 4, and depending on a single mom, it means everything. It's a huge deal, because 10% of, you know, $3,000 a month or whatever the exorbitant amount of money is now may not be a lot to some. It's a lot to me. And if you're being charged the same, which I doubt for a single person, for one individual, you're probably paying a lot less. So 10% of 500 is not a lot to you. 10% of 3,000 is a whole lot to me. And so that's the difference.
What you're saying really resonates. Before I say anything, does anyone have a response? You know, relate to that? I certainly relate to that. Actually, it makes me think about the training that needs to be done. You know, we're talking about more education. You know, right now it's like so popular to have DEI, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion trainings, like everywhere you go. I really think like that approach could be really helpful to just, you know, Wendy, all of the suffering you speak of, different levels, to give it a voice and platform and have a really organized approach to it. That's not so militant, but maybe just about being educational. Like, look, when you don't have insurance, this is what the suffering looks like. This is how it is. And there's a disconnect here. There's a bias here. And to really, am I talking crazy? Like, I think just talking about these issues in a way, you know, we always talk about person to person, but in terms of like doing a program capsule, maybe that's something to think about. Michael, do you have thoughts on any of this?
Well, I would just add, Jenny, I mean, I think Wendy and the others really present a very compelling picture. The truth is that insurance isn't enough. And folks take for granted what they have, maybe because they've had it so long, right? As you're saying, Wendy, in the union context. But the fact is, the boss can take that away any moment. And the only reason that we have it is because the union has had power to keep it. But every bargaining is a fight over just keeping it. And usually it gets worse. I mean, how many bargaining stories are there where, oh yeah, we got much better health benefits and a raise? When has that happened in the last 20 years? It hasn't really. And the grocery workers down in Los Angeles are going to go on and potentially another strike, right? Due to health benefits. And you know, Hugo, in your industry, those employers will fight tooth and nail to not pay for union health benefits. So organizing becomes incredibly difficult. So it's not just bargaining, it's organizing. So the level of insecurity revealed by the pandemic, when all those hospitality workers lost those incredible union benefit funds because there was no work. The whole system is so insecure, even when you have insurance, that I think we've got a real ability to link these experiences of people who have never had it and get some coverage for the first time, and those who take it for granted but really shouldn't because the insecurity level is so high.
Yes. And I would like to really, you know, just drill down, get Ankur to share his personal experience, if you don't mind, you know, as a substitute teacher. Am I right?
UTLA. So as a substitute teacher at LUSD, I got to work 100 days of instruction in order to qualify for healthcare in the first place. And this is already better than a lot of other districts because substitute teachers aren't even part of their union. And you talk about the layers of a union, and I started touching on that. It's so complicated, but at a school site, right, you talk about the way that a district or a boss negotiates with the workers. So at LUSD, there's like 7 major unions, right, representing all the different classifications of workers. The teachers union gets all the attention, but the principals have their own union, Association of Administrators Los Angeles. You got CSEA, librarians, you got office techs, you got SEIU Local 99, another 25, 30,000 workers, cafeteria workers, bus drivers. So you have all these different bargaining units, and guess what? The district goes after the weak one and negotiates it down and takes away healthcare one piece at a time, like you were talking about, Mr. Lighty, right? They try to take it away from family. They try to take it away from spouses. They try to take it away when you retire. Each bargaining cycle, they're trying to take it away at a different level. And then so my experience as a substitute teacher, where I got to work the exact number of days to just qualify, and then the next year I get healthcare. But as a single male, you know, Wendy, I appreciate what you're going through, but the district is still paying me or paying Kaiser on my behalf $1,000 a month. So the whole math, one of the biggest barriers is the math. People aren't doing math. Our districts aren't doing math. The government's not doing math. The politicians aren't doing math. You know who's doing the math? The insurance companies. And their math shows them making billions. So this is, I mean, from the substitute teacher, you see the layers because I move around school by school, district, I mean, not district, outside USD, but the different teachers, the retiring teachers, the new incoming teachers, everyone's got a different experience or different family. And obviously I like to talk and engage with people. And that's why I love being a substitute teacher, because you see all these different perspectives. And you know what? It's all the same. We're getting robbed by the insurance companies, and we're not getting the healthcare that we need and deserve across the board. Immigrant women, workers, young workers, old workers, and too often the people who have it are taking it for granted, but not us. And that's why we're in this struggle. And yeah, thank you for asking me that question, Jenny. That got me going.
No, it's great. You went fast. So kind of for people who aren't as familiar, and you know, I would like some clarification too. So the insurance companies get $1,000.
So LAUSD, public entity, is negotiating with Kaiser or different health insurance companies for the pools of workers that are then going to subscribe to their healthcare plan. So I get a choice: check this box, or this box. I take Kaiser. I like Kaiser. I've worked at a Kaiser hospital as a union organizer. The workers make it, you know, it's a good, but whatever your preference is. So then LAUSD gives us that choice, and they're negotiating separately with each of those services. Well, I mean, we know Medicare, one of the strengths is negotiating, but they're not willing to do it because guess what? Who's doing the negotiating? The health insurance companies with their lobbying and contributions. So like all these layers, right? The LAUSD school board could be pushing that. LA City Council with Hugo on board will definitely be pushing that, right? Gavin Newsom is not going to be pushing that. We need another governor candidate who's actually going to do it, because we've heard that lip service from people who get into power again and again. And if we're going to fall for it, fool me once, right? Come on. I ain't going to get fooled again on this.
I guess the outrage is they're getting the money. Is that whether or not you get healthcare? Whether or not you get the healthcare the next year, whether you make your hours?
LAUSD, because it's such a big organization, negotiates in a complicated way for each of the different classifications of workers. I don't want to take too much time because it is pretty.
Yeah.
So because I worked in this school year, 100 days, the next school year, if I am still an active employee with the district, then I will get healthcare month by month. And then if I stop working, then I don't have healthcare. And if I don't hit 100 days in that next year, then that third year, I would not have healthcare either. I actually don't have healthcare with the district right now because I was Scott Schmerlson's campaign manager who won a school board seat, and I did not sub. I had like 85 days, 90 days, you know, and so now I'm out of pocket paying $300 a month for the low tier Kaiser just to keep myself in there, versus the district would have been paying $1,000 per month for me to get the Cadillac plan. So that's kind of my situation, but you know, it is what it is. I can deal with it. I'm in the struggle, and we need to talk about all these different experiences and stories, because all of them show how incompetent the system is and how bad it is. And we need Medicare for all to, I think it's going to be cheaper and better. We can go back to that, right? It's going to be cheaper and better. We know it here. That's, I think, the simple message, and we need to keep carrying forward.
Yeah. I hope your candidate at least supports single payer or the idea of it. How about organizing the unions? What do you all think?
I actually have one quick point. I think what Wendy brought up is this fundamental question to how we win Medicare for all, which is how do we get, you know, groups that potentially have different short-term interests to work together to win something that could only be won with the power of an organized working class. And I think the answer comes down to focusing, you know, on what we have in common rather than our differences. And the fundamental thing we have in common is that the boss controls our healthcare. And the more we can use that, I think, at this moment and sorry if you can hear my dog barking in the background, the more we could use that as sort of a, you know, radical political education moment to bring people together and think about what that brings us rather than what that separates us, the collective bargaining benefits that it gives us to take healthcare off the table and away from the boss, the wage benefits, the pension benefits that we could get from that. And I think that's where the real opportunity to win something in the near term comes from.
Here. No, let me just jump in quickly, Jenny, because on this question of how we organize our unions, you know, many folks, activists, supporters have felt that without organized labor, we can't win Medicare for all. And certainly that's been the experience in other Western industrial democracies, that the labor movement really led their establishment of national healthcare systems. On the other hand, in the US, it often appears that the official labor movement follows the lead of the Democratic Party. And so when the National Democratic Party really abandoned Medicare for all in 1992 with Bill Clinton's candidacy, it took years for the AFL-CIO to come back to that position. It eventually happened in 2009. And sometimes it's a struggle even to maintain that position and engagement, because there's certainly unions who kind of have that view you were talking about, Wendy, reflected in their members. Hey, we've got insurance, the kind of system works okay for us. But on the other hand, it's pretty clear that those resources and that constituency has so much to gain, as you were saying, Noah, from Medicare for all, and just getting rid of the leverage the boss has over us as workers because of healthcare benefits. So there's that contradiction and necessity to bring the official labor movement and the broader labor movement, because of course, vast majority of workers are unorganized. So really that's the question. How do we do this? How do we overcome these obstacles to get labor in a position to lead for Medicare for all?
Yeah, if I could chime in here, I agree with a lot of the things that folks are saying. So how do we get folks to do it is look, I think it all comes from the rank and file, right? The power is in the rank and file, the strength is in the rank and file. And I know certainly these discussions, the rank and file pushed us, right? The leadership pushed, well, not me, I was pushing from the inside, right? To push a position for leadership to take, to say, yes, we believe in single payer, right? Medicare for all. And so, and the discussion really came up from President Biden, right? I remember the rhetoric, right? He was saying, oh, union members like the health insurance that they have. They like their private health insurance, right? And what that created was, I think, a very negative narrative. It's about, I have mine, right? And why are we going to risk what we have in order to get something we don't understand, right? Well, I would say for all the union leaders out there, I would say this is a similar pitfall that we had in the 60s and the 70s when we were organizing and the union labor was much more robust. We said, well, why are we going to keep organizing more labor, more folks into labor union? We have a good standard already. And then deindustrialization happened, and now unions are like, on their deathbed, right, trying to research through the service sector industry, right? So we know what this kind of thinking gets us. It gets us nothing, right? And sort of some of the things that Ankur mentioned, and the dynamics could be different in every different union, but in our union, we negotiate per hour, right? I know UTLA does one amount per month per person. We do per hour, right? And so our union members, make about $23 an hour, but for every hour that they work, the employer pays an additional $8, right? So they don't see that because that goes into the pool so that everybody can have health insurance. Well, guess what? If we had single payer, those $8 would go somewhere else, right? We would be making $31 an hour, right? We can put that money into the pension. We can put that money in other benefits. And so having single payer takes it off of our backs. We don't have to negotiate that with the boss, right? And we can put our energy and our resources into things that can be in our pocket, right? And so I think this kind of vision that we need to explain this vision to the rank and file. I think when they understand that, I think they are all about it. And that helps push, I think, the larger organization.
If I may, I really agree, with everything that is being said here. But I'll add that I think everybody plays a role, right? As much as sometimes rank and file, they're gonna lead. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes leadership comes from behind the scenes. Sometimes it comes from the bottom up, right? And so I think one of the most important things that we can do will be education, will be reaching out, will be making those connections with the workers. Because at the end of the day, you are the reason why unions exist. A rank and file member is only as powerful as you make them. If they are no longer leading, then guess what? A new leader will step in place. And so that's our job. Our job as citizens is to pay attention and say, hey, wait a minute. this doesn't make sense, or we don't agree, or we want something different. And so our job is to be educated and to make those connections and to reach out and to have that communication. But I also feel like, as labor, gains its strength back, I feel like unions are coming back. And I feel like this is our moment to remind everyone like why unions were so impactful, why unions were so important, why union represented and literally created and have protected what we believe to be the middle class, right? We said children do not deserve to work under horrible conditions. We said there should be work hours. No one should be working insane amounts of hours where their safety is at risk, right? Like unions did this and this became a law. And now it's not a union thing, right? So I don't have a 8-hour day because I work for a union. This is now federal policy, right? And so the thing about policy is that perhaps some states can give you more, but they can't give you less. And so as union, I think regains its strength and regains its power and reminds people, the impact that they had and the beautiful things that they were able to give to the rest of society in terms of protections. Like this is one of them, and this is probably one of the biggest, because when we're talking about safety, and we're talking about life, quality of life, work-life balance, anything that you can talk to me, you care about my family. If you want to talk to me about, you care about my economic, well-being, my social well-being, whatever you want to talk about, every single policy that has to do with protecting me as a person and protecting my family has to do with providing us with access to healthcare. And so for me, this is our moment. This is our time. And as people are like regaining, that empowerment of saying, oh yeah, I have a voice in this, right? At every level. As a leader, we expect you to lead. As a worker, we expect you to stand up and build solidarity with us. Like everybody plays a role, and we should all be in this together. Like I feel this is like such a great moment to like come together and say we are all in unison. We all deserve healthcare. And I know what it's like to not have it, and I can't forget what it's like. I will never forget what it's like to worry and to think, should I go to the hospital or can I wait another day or two? Should I go to the hospital or can I bring down my child's temperature enough? These are real thoughts, and we're playing with a balance of life that, some of us, I am no medical professional. There is no reason why I should be playing with my child's temperature at any point, So I really feel like this is the moment for all of us in whatever position that we have, whatever role that we play, to make our way into like this moment in time and say, okay, how do I help? How do I pitch in? And how do we make this work? Because at the end of the day, it's for all of us. Like unions never fought for one group. We fought for everybody. We believe in being a sister and a brother, and this is what it means. And so for me, it's like, this is exactly what unions do. We fight for other people. We protect other people. Like this is exactly it. And so for me, it's like the perfect like mix and the perfect like point. Like this is it. This is our time to lead.
That almost sounds like a closing statement, which we're getting to time. Do you actually have some additional thoughts you want to add, Wendy, as we wind down?
Honestly, I am so deeply honored to be like included in this conversation. I really want to thank each and every one of you for all the work that you guys do, because, we can't be everywhere. Sometimes, as a single parent that has had certain obstacles, I always say I'm showing up for that mom that didn't, and so in each one of our spaces, you're showing up for the teachers that couldn't, you're showing up for the organizers that couldn't, we're showing up for the workers that couldn't, we're showing up for whatever constituencies we represent that cannot. And for some of us at this moment in time, as we talk about healthcare, we're talking about people that are no longer here. So we're showing up for people that don't have another chance. And that to me is so impactful and so important, and it really like chokes me up because it means a lot to me. I know people that are no longer here that could have benefited from access to healthcare. So it means the world, and it's literally going to save so many people's lives. And thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this conversation with you all.
Thank you so much for being here, Wendy. I know this is a really personal issue for you, and you've mentioned, your father, and perhaps for another conversation. How about Ankur? Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, union jobs save lives. I learned something. Yes. No, that's a beautiful phraseology, Wendy. I totally agree. Wendy, appreciate you sharing and really giving context to everything. No, I love where you're coming at DSA New York with this big picture, like how are we going to use it for the movement? Mr. Lighty, appreciate you and your work so much. Hugo on the city council going to do this and from the bottom up. And Jenni, thank you for putting it together. Amazing. I know that you're texting and organizing. Thank you for thinking of me and including me. I know I come with some pessimism, but we are, you got to do the work no matter what. And that's what we're here to do. And I feel it like, and one thought that I had, and I'm doing now, I'm just about to join the PACE committee, the Political Action Committee for UTLA, because there was vacancies. The amount of energy we spent, Bernie movement, the Medicare movement, in the California Democratic Party, and probably across, think about where that energy could have gotten us in other places. And, I think the union makes us strong. The union job saves us lives. And there's a lot more places that need to unionize. And that is, I think, some framework to think about how do we carry the struggle on in all these different intersectional ways, because we got to do it for all the reasons that we talked about today. So thank you. Glad to be on with you all in the struggle for sure.
Thank you, Ankur. Glad to have you here. Noah.
Yeah, I think I share everyone's feelings about how honored I am to be here. Thank everyone for putting this together and for coming. It's incredibly inspiring to see, the work that people are doing that I don't come in contact with, to know that we're all pushing for the same thing. And I'll say that I think it's easy to get pessimistic about Medicare for all, and, in the wake of Bernie and in a Biden administration. But I think I think it's an incredibly optimistic moment because it remains super popular, and it's our best organizing tool. And I think the future for Medicare for all is still very bright.
Thank you so much, Noah, for being here. Hugo.
Yeah, thank you all for participating in this group. Thank you for having me. Like I said it earlier, right? I'm the most optimistic I've ever been. This is a long-term game. I encourage everybody to join, structures of power. I always say that, right? But the right ones. Don't join the right ones. Join the labor movement. Join the Democratic Socialist of America. Join those progressive groups that have that right vision, that long-term vision. We didn't win all these things that we have now overnight. People fought, and so whatever you build, you're leaving it for someone else. And, just keep going. Si se puede.
Si se puede. I'm with you. I'm really thankful for this discussion. I have so much respect for all of you all. I feel I really gained a lot from this discussion, particularly just thinking about the education piece, just how to talk about this again, just hearing your stories and the way you frame your own approach. That's been really helpful. And I think it's just so important that we educate in a way that's accessible. And, I know we want to go after leadership and all of that, but just making it non-threatening, because I think at the end of the day, everyone's got a sense of morality, right? And to appeal to that, I think that it was such a great reminder just how to approach this to appeal to people's best sides. And, Noah, you're bringing up the importance of this issue in terms of civic engagement. I think, we can't forget that. And just thank you all for being here. Michael, if you'd like to have some closing thoughts here, it'd be great.
Let me just add my thank you. And the note that you're all ending on is exactly why we wanted to do this panel, is because you're bringing a sense of optimism and possibility, political analysis and organizing chops to the issue. So it's not just pie in the sky optimism. It's grounded in how you're organizing and what is, your experience talking and organizing folks on this issue. And that makes the hugest of difference to those of us who've been in it for a while, or even those who've just joined the movement. This kind of experience is actually what animates our work. And we can never let the other side bring us down, because then they won, right? And so our ultimate success depends on exactly the kind of work you all are doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Jenni.
Yeah. It's nice to just lean on each other. Movements are so much like ups and downs and griefs, and just to find solidarity with each other and come together again, it's energizing.